Alright, so today we're going to be talking about the AFA, or the American Family Association. After a brief history, we'll be discussing what they're doing, what they're supporting through their actions, and a brief counter-argument kind of going against their main beliefs. So we have 4 different presenters today going over 3 main topics. So to start, we're going to look at Nazis and the KKK. You'll see that while there's some differences, obviously, the AFA is a mass movement similar to those, going against certain people and certain people's beliefs. The main difference being that the AFA is not violent. They're more of a boycott and propaganda group than a go out and, beat up someone or kill someone for disagreeing with them. So first we need to know what started this group. In 1977, Donald Wildman, who was a pastor of a Mormon church in Missouri, started the National Foundation for Decency. Decency being his idea of what was decent television. He thought that a lot of what was on TV starting in that time was indecent, things that shouldn't be publicized or shouldn't be made popular. As well as pornography. He thought that pornography should not be being made or being distributed in any form. So, from there we have the 1988 changing of the American Family Association, which I think now is a better title for them, because at first the Federation for Decency is just, like I said, television, any sort of medium culture that's going to be out there, showing off different things. But if you're the American Family Association, you're starting to see them go for the typical family of a husband, a wife, and children. Not men and men or women and a woman, which is a lot of what they go against, especially closer to now. So the 1980s and the 1990s, even into the 2000s, but we'll be discussing 80s and 90s, was a lot of boycotts. Like I said, there's no violence for this group. There's not a lot of going out there and getting in people's faces or something like that. There's just a lot of talk, boycotting, ads. So in 1986, we saw a boycott of 7-Eleven. They were selling inappropriate magazines, Penthouse, Playboy, those types of pornographic magazines. And it was a success. They were able to, 7-Eleven eventually was like, all right, you're boycotting us. We're not making the money we need. We're going to stop selling these. In 1989, they did the same thing, except to Walden Books, a publishing company and bookstore. They actually received a lawsuit, and it was because there's pretty much a law that says that any store will be able to do their business without harassment from other groups. And it was settled out of court, but pretty much the AFA backed down. In 93, the AFA, they took out ads in the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, a lot of prominent publication groups, and they urged everyone to either boycott a television show known as NYPD Blue, or for the ABC partners of the ABC was the group putting out the show, so their partners that would be airing it, not to broadcast it. And they actually got 25% of the affiliates at the time, which was around 225. So 25% was a reasonable amount. And they actually decided not to air it. It was a lot of smaller a lot of smaller stations though, and what made people believe is that the amount of hype and the amount of publicity they gave the show through this probably helped the show more than hindering it, and it was a very popular show. In the 80s and 90s, throughout the 2000s, like I said, there's a lot more, but we're going to be talking about that later on when we discuss what they're doing and why they're doing it. So in 2009, we're going to make a little bit of a jump here. They made what many believe to be a very bad decision, and they hired Brian Fisher as one of their main guys, very much in the public eye with the company. The problem was that a lot of people now think they're a hate group, and he is one of the reasons why. They went from a group that was, against, pornography, against graphic violence on television, things like that. And they were against LGBTQ communities and that things similar to that and things supporting that, but they weren't going out and saying things like Brian Fisher was. So he became notorious for some of his opinions that were just terrible. He argued that no one that was Muslim should be allowed in the military because they're a threat to national security. He put what we'd call extremists or terrorists in the same group as the law-abiding Muslim citizens who were in America doing all the right things and not doing anything wrong. But he was just putting it all together. He also made some other claims about Muslim people that we mentioned later. He also claimed that homosexuality was somehow the cause for Adolf Hitler and the Nazi movement, saying that Adolf Hitler was gay, and that somehow this spiked him making the Nazi movement, and a lot of his lieutenants and a lot of his higher-ups were gay. Something that's quite ridiculous considering they even were hunting down and killing LGBTQ people and people of that nature. So it's just quite ridiculous where he got that they were being caused by this. So Brian Fisher is one of the main reasons that they're thought of as a hate group as opposed to just a organization going for certain beliefs. So next we're going to be talking about the approach of the AFA, and I'm going to turn that over to another one of my presentation partners who's going to be kind of going into what they're doing. And now that we have a kind of understanding of where they're at, where they've been, and how they got to where they are, we can get a full understanding of that.
The American Family Association faces the problems that it sees with a different method than other organizations. Even though they are collectively very outspoken regarding many hot topics, they are not violent in their approach. One of the main ways that the AFA stands for things in which they believe is by boycotting organizations or companies that disagree with their stance. This has been used against many different entities over the years, as the AFA's approach has never really changed. Back in 1995, Charles S. Clark tells that when a Calvin Klein advertisement promoted hypersexualized teenagers, the AFA was one of the first critics to speak out against it. Furthermore, they called other clothing companies to refute the Klein campaign. In this, the AFA was successful as the ad was pulled. A decade later, however, in 2005, as reported by Amy Groth and Gus Lubin for the Business Insider in 2011, the AFA complained against Ford Motor Vehicles for taking out advertisements in a gay magazine. While this was effective for a short period of time, Ford later readmitted their ads to the magazine, and the AFA maintained the boycott for several more years. Currently, the AFA has a 2018 Naughty or Nice list to help Christmas shoppers only give their patronage to companies that support the Christian version of the holiday. Another tool that the AFA uses is that of response, whether it is blogged opinion or written communication directed towards influential people who could create a change, such as politicians, CEOs, etc. According to their website, last updated in 2018, they have an ongoing Take Action page that keeps followers updated on current issues. It also discusses the ways followers can be involved by directing them to where complaints or concerns can be made. Another area of the website is the portion referred to as the Stand, where the AFA takes time to detail its beliefs in relation to culture, faith, and family. One other thing worth mentioning is that even though homosexuality is something that the AFA fervently disagrees with, the Executive Vice President Casey M. Smith Jr. once stated that bullying can be prevented without endorsing homosexual behavior. This is in support of their unusual dichotomy of disagreement, wherein there appears to be no intention to personal injury. Now that we have discussed the way that the AFA handles its opinions when relating to others, we are going to look at their actions in comparison with another group that holds the same sort of beliefs as the AFA.
The American Family Association may be one of the largest organizations that is fighting against homosexuality, but there are many more with the same intentions. The Americans for Truth About Homosexuality, also known as the AFTAH, is another organization that is fighting against those who are homosexuals. According to the AFTAH's official website, the AFTAH is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to exposing the homosexual, bisexual, transgender advocates' agenda. They push to have an organization that is based off of Christian beliefs, just like the AFA. The leading president of the AFTAH, Peter LaBarbera, started his fight against homosexuals in 1993. He started the Lambda Report, a newsletter that used first-hand sources in reporting to reveal the aims of organized gay movements. In the Lambda Report, LaBarbera's goal was to expose the funding behind all pro-homosexual groups, such as Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. He states, homosexuals, bisexuals, and transsexual groups spend tens of millions of dollars every year to market and normalize their apparent lifestyles. Yet after all these years, there are still only a handful of advocates working solely to expose and counter their agendas. The AFTAH's main goal is to convert those of the LGBT community from being homosexual to being heterosexual through Christ. While the AFA is fighting against companies that are promoting gay policies, the AFTAH is fighting against other movements that are fighting for gay rights. The AFA is currently boycotting Target this Christmas season due to 3 major reasons: sexual predators, both-sex bathrooms, and the amount of money that they earn every Christmas season. They believe that Target is more concerned about themselves and not about their shoppers. While the AFA is fighting against Target, the AFTAH is fighting the Virginia School Board for saying that boys and girls have different brains unless they are in the bathroom. Their Fairfax County kids are now being told that they can transition into whatever sex matches their gender identity when they are using the restroom. They believe that people should use the bathrooms at their biological sexes and disagree with the school board on promoting children to go against God's wishes. Although these are 2 different organizations, they both have the same type of goals and are fighting for very similar rights. Despite the previous arguments made, there are reasons to believe that the American Family Association does not always use the right methods to promote their cause. This has resulted in a bad reputation for the organization.
The name Brian Fisher rings bells among the members of the AFA. According to SBLcenter.org, Brian Fisher was the former spokesperson and blogger for the AFA. To some, he represents the time when the actions of the AFA created serious problems for the organization. In 2009, Fisher was appointed the Director of Issues and Analysis. He was also hired to operate some of the AFA's media outlets. Brian Fisher first drew unwanted media attention to the AFA through his blog posts on their website, Rightly Concerned. Fisher used the platform to endorse his own extreme views. As stated before, he made claims that many found outrageous. He believed that Muslims should be banned from the U.S. and serving in the U.S. military. He made remarks that blamed homosexuality for the Holocaust. He believed that the Medal of Honor was being feminized because it wasn't awarded to soldiers who killed people, but to those who saved other soldiers. Fisher also believed that HIV was not the cause of AIDS. These remarks reflected directly on the AFA. People began to think differently about the organization. Tim Wilderman, the president of the AFA, decided not to speak about Fisher's statement. When approached by reporters, he expressed that Fisher's beliefs did not represent the AFA. People following the story in the organization were confused on why the AFA continued to allow Fisher access to their media. His statements caused such backlash, and yet it appeared as if the AFA stepped back and agreed with his notions because of the president's lack of response. Behind the scenes, the AFA constantly kept an eye on Fisher. They filtered many of his posts, re-editing lines that seemed too harsh for the public. It was troubling for them to have to clean up behind Fisher's mess and still maintain the peaceful image that was slowly slipping. So the AFA soon made a swift decision. In 2015, Brian Fisher was demoted to a radio show host. His radio show is still broadcasted through the AFA's website. In order to prevent any further entanglement, Fisher's views are promoted as his own. However, the fact that Fisher still remains ties with the AFA's name continues to cause problems. When writers want to talk about the wrongs of the AFA, they bring up Fisher's statements. They bring up how he still has ties to the organization. Many believe that this is because Wildman agrees with some of his notions. According to an article titled American Family Association, written for the book Special Interest Group Profiles for Students, the AFA focuses on the influence of television and media on our society. The AFA takes this passion and knowledge of media representation and works hard to filter the statements that they make. Because of this, Human Rights Campaign Vice President for Communications Fred Sains stated that no matter how much flashy PR tricks the AFA tries to pull, the AFA has more than earned their label as a hate group. Many, like Sains, believe that the PR tricks are a cover-up for the AFA. They keep a cautious eye out for the future actions of the organization, believing that one day their real motives will be shown. In conclusion, we will review briefly what we have covered in this presentation. According to an article on the AFA by Kansas State University's pre-law advisor Hans J. Hacker, the American Family Association is one of the premier conservative Christian organizations. The organization protests against pornography, offending student textbook options, gay rights, and the programming choices of major TV networks. In our presentation, we have explored this information. We gave viewers a brief look into the history of the AFA, stated methods that the AFA uses to promote its causes, stated information on other organizations that are fighting the same cause, and the methods that they use, and also gave an example of a time when the methods of the AFA created problems for the organization. With that being said, we encourage everyone to learn not only about the AFA, but also about other groups who may be handling the problems they intend to solve in a violent way. We need to be aware of what's happening in our world. As the age-old saying goes, knowledge is power.